The fragile liberty is the topic I want to discuss loudly, mostly with myself and whoever cares to think about this issue alongside this talk. The fragile liberty is very visible many places in the world, and perhaps a big symbol of it is that small painting I got from one of the Danish drawers that he really predicts how the free of speech is actually in an abyss and cutting itself off from the shore, and how the liberties of political, religious, and value freedom has also become very much under pressure, and maybe people are looking towards more secure and safe ways to live than follow the fragile ways of liberty. Everyone knows that these migrants who came from place to place seeking freedom for their religion over centuries have been like in a dream when they first came to the United States and landed there on the shore with that dream of the new hope and the new land, and how that could be a new start in life. And the same goes many other places in the world where people had been longing for changes from tyrants and small groups of people leading the nations while everyone else are in poverty and cannot speak out their minds. And then they can look back now, those old people who 40, 50 years ago were seeing another world change underneath them. It must be really tough and put us in a kind of depressive state of silence and confusion. I'm reminded of the people from several countries, especially in the East and Middle East, who fought against several kind of rulers that used all the money and all the resources of the country. And so one of these had even a golden toilet. Another had so many castles that it was unable to, couldn't count the servants and windows in it, and so on. And when they finally got to change these people and make the revolt succeed, maybe by help from other powers who had interest in that, but at the same time help them to the freedom they've been yearning for. A person in prison won't often care who is helping him out of that prison, as long as it brings him out to the sun and light and fresh air and a new start. Especially if this person is being unjustly put there because of his views, ideas, orientations, and maybe critique of the leaders and rulers. And so they can look back, these people now, and see the same persons who wanted this freedom for everyone has been using it to suppress everyone. What is it that makes it difficult to uphold the liberty of yourself and others? And why is the idea of Voltaire so lost on us today that he said to a gentleman at one point, as it is quoted, we don't really know if it is a true quote by Voltaire, but it could likely be. He said to him, "Sir, I totally disagree with you, but I will defend your right to the death to speak out your opinion." And so it is with liberty. If you want it, you also need to give it. It's like that torch that will shine for everyone and not only the one who enjoys it. Liberty is above power, above the greed, and above the personal interests. It is common human value, dream, ideal. And by God, what have we done? What have we done to it in this world of today? Where is it? Even the place where this torch has been shining so brightly already for a few hundred years Despite troubles and setbacks and inner suppression of some groups in there and out there, it has been the torch that had shone on and lit up a lot of the ideas in the world to go towards it, start seeking it and changing people's life so they could gain it. It's a liberty that has been there besides the goddess of justice, the blind goddess of justice. These two had gone hand in hand, showing the way to people who are yearning to be the humans they want to be and not what they are forced to be. And so, where is it today, and how is it used? And how would that liberty shine on us today if it were to shine from beneath all the ashes and the clouded skies, darkening with troubles and despair? So my thoughts goes to political prisoners, economical prisoners, prisoners of the free idea, minorities of religion and values, people who do not fit in because of ethnicity or different orientation. They are away from the light and buried in dungeons and places they should never have been. No human should be. And so this liberty is lost on these people today. This liberty is much needed. And the place where it's shining brightest has also the struggle of keeping it shining truly and wonderfully to the world as it should be. And that's what makes it so scary already, that we can live some time in darkness, but when the place of light and the source of light becomes the place where the light crumbles and the torch seems to be faltering, to be shining high in the skies, then we will be close to the abyss and afraid of losing it all to a century or a half century or a decade at least of tyranny, fightings over territorial, national, ethnical, religious, secular, whatever fights we are going into, where liberty never shines and won't ever shine, because her goal is to light the torch for everyone alive, for every human, and let that beacon in the heart of seeking that freedom for everyone without fear to speak one's mind, to go out and be with the group you want, to have the religious beliefs that you are participating in, and to be that person that you want to be without fear or scare or the need to fly because of intolerance. This is her goal, to make humans feel safe and light in their way of being. And so they can actually, like birds in the sky, fly from place to place in their hearts and minds, feeling the beauty of the earth and the living in it. And all that is at great risk because of the political turmoils that's surrounding us, the greed and the interests, the cynicism that has taken place and is shining through directly or indirectly, the loss of belief in the ability to live in freedom for us humans, the tendency to think that we are part of something that we need to be suppressed. That's our natural state. And that we are in a jungle where the strongest is allowed by every rule to kill and suppress the weakest. And where interests, short-termed, long-termed, middle-termed, personal-termed, whatever they are, give way to alliances that keep upholding the suppressions. She doesn't like that at all and was never meant to be that kind of symbol. She wants to have the people the leaders, the ideas feeding her goal of making the humans believe again. And it needs a beacon and a place where it could shine, and we're better than one of the strongest places on earth. And that's what people can be now in their heads and hearts, feeling sorry for maybe standing on the brink of losing, not because of who's ruling today or who was ruling yesterday or last year or last decade, but because of the signals that have been coming out from there for many years, and especially in recent times, in a way or another telling us we have another definition of liberty and understanding of who she is for and where is the limits fighting for her and why she is not going to shine truly on the world right now as she should have. And all this in a way triggered by all that we see, and we ask ourselves, why is it so hard for people who get to power to understand that they will leave a greater legacy if they could be a symbol and stand underneath her feet, fighting for her value and spreading her beacon and her light in the world? Why do they also fail to understand that when you step up and keep going up and stepping both on people, resources, and everything, at one end you will go so high up that it will crumble under you, and maybe the fall will be too steep for you to reach out and hold on to anything? And why do we fail, and these people in power fail to see that by losing the free speech, by losing the freedoms, by losing especially the liberty to be the human in life that everyone should be empowered to be, we are losing ourselves and they are losing every potentiality that there is in the world to get this world up on the level of a global village, a global culture. And so, leaving all that aside, it becomes hard to uplift the liberty and fight for it. It seems like it needs the hands of a god or a prophet or somebody with a superpower. And they seem to have a lot of power, all these different nations and people who have the power in them, but they seem to be more focused on using that power to spread the understanding that beacon can only shine if they are there on the top and if it's their interests that are served. And so the loss behind that is much bigger than we think. And so it makes one sad and maybe lose the focus and the belief that this liberty is really true and can be true for people. And maybe we go back to think that, well, the natural state is that we are a herd who are being led by those who by nature or culture have gotten the grace of being better, stronger, more in position to lead the human race. And so there will be only one way after that, and that's the way of clash and crash, the way of throwing ourselves into the darkness of wanting to get rid of the slavery and the falter in our hearts by trying to kill it in the other people that we're going to meet on the battlefields or in the pseudo wars that's being readied for us anyhow. How sad, how maddening, how disturbing this is. And it's disturbing me a lot, and I think disturbing a lot of people who maybe do not have the words and lack to reach out to something they can hold on to. And so some people, they turn to the deep core of belief that when things gets too dark, that means we are preparing for a great light, and that can be in the person of a savior. It can be in the new shining of a new era where we strongly go back to uphold and uplift that true value of liberty that we have been given by the God Himself. And this is something that is very, very deep to attach to, even if you are not a believer. We know how religion has the impact on people and can also be used as a tool of suppression and can be used to put people in the same dungeons that they are put in today. And so it's something deep in human nature. The fear of freedom is very deep in human nature. It's like we are going somewhere where we feel we cannot see the end, and we can get too scared of the light. So we would prefer to stay in the dark. It's a deep philosophy all the way back to the Greeks and maybe beyond that. What can we say? I know from the religions I belong to and know about that God has given that freedom to humans. He gave it so they could use it and let them use it. And so He allowed them even to oppose and choose their way, even of belief, even though God Himself says, where there is no doubt and shouldn't be. I am your God and your light in life, and I'm the one you should turn to, but you're gonna get this freedom of staying blind or turning away. That's amazing, that even the very source of monotheism that wants to put people on one track of belief has given this deep freedom to every human. So why can't we do not have the same values, share that? Why can't we uphold it, even between us? And so it's a darkening world in many ways. And those who think it's shining on them because of their value or speciality or uniqueness, they are mistaken. Because when darkness spreads, it spreads also to those who think they are above it. And they will lose the happiness that they think they are gaining. This is not something I'm dreaming or thinking. It's something proven by philosophy and history, science and religion, all together, and by common sense. By simple deduce of how the world would be with all slaves and the few who are not slaves at heart. Every man and woman knows somewhere in themselves that there is a shining beacon of a small light of freedom that they belong to and belongs to them. And that to try to find it even in the small enclosed space of a prison or a dungeon or a workplace or wherever they are held back from enjoying that freedom. They know that they have it in them and they should have been able to use it, and nobody can take it from them. And so many people are more willing to die for what they believe just because it's their belief than they are willing to give in and go back into the streets and under the lights of electricity and the sweet homes in the buildings. They want to stick to the deep-rooted feeling that they will not be suppressed, and they will stick to their values and beliefs no matter how much the suppression is going to hit them. And what has happened in history time after time, that these clever people open the AI that they have created, let them find the reports they can do it in minutes today, and let's see what it will tell them. If it tells them anything else, then it's a false report. Then the value of the human fight for freedom has been the deepest. the fight for being part of what you want to be part of. That's why kingdoms had faltered, barons had brought people to the field, nations have gone to expand their territories or defend their homes. Small groups of people have upheld against big armies and nations. Big, strong, suppressive armies with kings or emperors have not been able to defeat a small band of people really valuing the freedom. And if they ever defeated them, later history will send their remembrance into the future and makes them the heroes who are valued and looked up to. And so people will find their way to that torch again. So if these people in power who are taking the world in their hands and have gotten this power by the freedom and liberty they've got, with the power they've got, are in such ways that they are cynically misusing the torch of liberty or abandoning her, they will be abandoned and they will get a drawback they cannot imagine, because humans are born to be free and they are born to worship at the same time. And worship is not necessarily slavery. When you submit to something you freely love and like, you are free in that submission. And that's the idea, basic philosophy of the monotheist religion, at least, but also in different philosophies, that you should be free to love until submission. And if you do that, you have made your choice. But you cannot be pushed and forced into it without losing part of yourself or becoming that gray, tired, soulless person who really is not motivated to fight on behalf of the people who want to take all the freedom for themselves. And maybe you can cheat some of the people, all of the time, and all the people some of the time, but you cannot keep all the people all the time under that illusion of being free without having that freedom being a true light in their heart. So where are we going, and why is liberty such a fragile state today, and maybe seems to be more and more of it? And so when you look to all the incidents we have had the last many decades, especially I, who are from the Middle East, have seen and read about very tragic stories that maybe would have taken the ability to laugh from anyone that would have stopped up by them. And we should maybe not laugh again until this is settled. But human, when they are deprived of everything, has the ability to laugh that last laughter before the guillotine falls on their heads. And so when I've looked in the history of the Middle East and then later understood part of the East and some of what has happened in both Europe and the West, I find that liberty have been deprived from many, many people for so long. And we had a big beacon for that liberty that could have shone on the world in their own nation, but also outside it. And it could have been a perfect, beautiful example of a place of total harmony, inclusion, and side by side brotherhood, and true citizenship on those ideals. But we always get disturbed, and people who want it all disturb that notion, kill the people who speak out, and disturb the peace that could have been brought out of all this. And the Middle East is the same. How this beacon of power that could have taken out the dictators at any time have left them to be also in Latin America, East Asia, because they do not want to lose some interests, access, or whatever. So they are too calculating and thereby losing the light of that torch. And so the fights becomes vaguely understood by people are not for the freedom of these people they're fighting for, but for the interest that lies behind. And so the mask falls, and it has fallen several times, and people try to pick it up and say, take the mask on again, but believe in it this time. And still, this big power and these big places who have uplifted that idea of liberty and really educated their citizens to believe in it, and now educating the world for a century or so, have faltered to keep on that belief in people, because the mask is falling every time. And maybe it's falling more in open dictatorships around the world, and people who stick to power and are ready to suppress people in the name of that same freedom and right they have gotten, instead of saying, I would rather step down than accept any bloodshed or any of my people hurt. What's the trouble? They can do that. And so still we can look and see that the peaceful process of giving and handing over power in several places where this beacon of freedom has shined is still giving us hope that this is something to build on. No internal fights, no stabbing in the backs, directly at least, and no trying to stay in power for more than the constitutions or the laws allow it. And people have to choose and pick and go back and choose again. And they can demonstrate and oppose, but then they have to go back and adhere and listen, because that's how it goes. We adhere to the rule that has given the freedom to the opposition like it has given it to ourselves. But is this really upholding, and where are we going the next years, the many next years? And how are the people who are dissatisfied with who got chosen actually using their power to try to disturb things more than accept them? And so we are in a state of big fogs. In my idea, I can't see through, and many can't see through. Even I listen to people who are very clever and following the trends and news, they cannot see what's really gonna happen. They can guess and talk, and most of it goes back to the same issues of here and now interests and goals and trying to be realistic and all that is following. Or maybe they point out that we can see some kind of private interest behind some things that's going on. And in the end, you cannot get this torch of liberty to the people in the world if you are lacking having it at home. So this picture on my wall is very expressive in that manner. We are in our hands cutting with the free speech we've gotten the line of liberty that should have been shining, and so instead it's a darkening sky and ominous red in some way and dark beneath us, leaving the green, yellow and light colors and going into a kind of pseudo death, because liberty is really what feeds our feeling of living or the fight for it. So everyone, even those who believe in strong traditions and conservative rules and constraining liberties, they are fighting for that kind of life, and that's a liberty. And so when we leave that and lose it, we are just shadows of what we are and our true spirits that are really the ones who should uplift us. This is just my silly talk that no one hears and listens to, or maybe will ever hear. But I learned to use my voice even though nobody's listening, because at least it's confirming my own soul and belief that this is uplifting and this is the true thing to say. and it gives the thoughts more clearer words and ideas, and so suddenly you have structured and understood what's going on around you by talking about it. I hope the torch of liberty will gain its ground again by those who hold the power and hold the ability to spread it in a true and not double moralistic manner, and that the world will understand that it's not just a mean of exploitation, but it's a true way of living, and that every human should be free to say his or her opinion and should be free to choose his or her thoughts and believe and live according to them without fear, and should be free to live where he or she wants to be, and should be free to be with those people who or she wants to be. So I think we need a new beacon of that kind, and we need it to ring through, as they say, the light to shine. But in order for the light to shine, the darkness must be present, and so we are in a present darkness that's darkening more and more, and we are more and more shallow and not really grasping these ideas or believing in them. We've lost the belief even in the ability for us to be free, or the trueness of that liberty. It's like it's an old advertisement that has been used over and over again and misused, so that people allow themselves to be suppressors because they look at those who are carrying the beacon of light and freedom, uh, and can point out that they are not really and truly living for it. So when religions in the old days failed and people revolted the last century or the one before and turned away from it, it was because the mask fell and they could see that the kingdom of heaven and the values of the belief and practices had been for the use of some and led to bloodshed among the most, suppression for different groups, and horrible ways of what you can call double moral and wrongdoings behind the lines, bringing personal interest to those people who maybe are sitting cynically on the top of that religious tree and saying these things to others but do not really believe they are fit. And maybe we are now in a space where we see this new religion that is called atheism, and way of life called secularism, and under the name of democracy, being used in the same way or faltering in the same way. And that's the abyss and darkness I'm talking about, that we are losing once again the quest for the human value at its core, the human true lifting of ourselves and life to that quality we all should be in and be living for and giving space to among each other and with each other. It's just not a speech, it's not an ideal, it is something that can go through. If you believe that you can give to others what you want others to give you and they believe the same, we will find that harmony. And if you believe that when you use your free of speech, others have the same right, and they believe that when they have that right, they also have to understand that you are giving space for it. And so we find that balance again. And I believe that that will shine. It always shines from time to time, but maybe we are deserving the darknesses we are in now because we have abandoned the beacon of freedom, and that beacon of light that should have been shining on us longer and longer, deeper and deeper. And so they say it's called enlightenment, That means when you go to some place and understand truly what life and values of life is about. It's not about going to school and sitting 10 to 20 years on the bench and coming out with a closed head and a mind that didn't understand anything, and having the slave mentality with you just to obey and not really to believe or understand your value and the mission you're carrying of bringing that value to every human, and how important it is to have that liberty in your private space, in some kind of social space, and to uphold it and protect it for the others as you do for yourself. This seems lost, and that's the true enlightenment that can bring us back and out of that abyss if we ever get back. And otherwise, it's just waste of money on manipulative learnings and ideas, and people can be so clever in some things that are needed for technology or needed for development, but they are not aware maybe how important that what they are doing and building should be for the service of mankind and not just a small part of mankind. And how do we secure ourselves against that? It's the beacon of freedom and liberty that is that security. And if it does not stay with us and stay with the people in power, educating themselves on it all the time and getting back to remembrance of it all the time, we will be lost. And they will abuse it, abuse us, because you will abuse them the same way. None of us is much better. In the darkness, all cats are gray, and every human is that shadow that we see in the other. But that's why the Enlightenment is so important and is so closely related to that freedom and that liberty that we should all be a part of and be upholding. And that liberty can very well be religious. It can very well be the one God, and it can very well be the science and the logic and democratic secular notion, or a rule of wise men who are chosen by the people. Can be a wise king, enlightened king. That's what we have to understand. It's not a name and it's not a certain type of rule that brings us that freedom or liberty. We are seeing that clearly in the world the last decades, and people knows that more and more. Those blindness and blindfolds are faltering, that, and people are standing more and more. It's not about what it's called. Everyone is calling their nation today for something special, but where is the practice of it? Every time you look in the news, there is somebody who do not want to give up power or will be killed because he got the power by the nation and overstepped someone who wanted it. Inner fights and tragedies, and only the superpowers, the superman, the super group who have been given the greatest powers have that greater responsibility of bringing all that back. And you can say, should they do it by force? Of course, they should bring the value of freedom out to the world by forcing any suppressor back from his suppression and avoiding exploiting what they want to exploit or are exploiting today, and maybe in that way blinding and killing the torch in the hearts and the minds of the others, so they turn to that darkness and find it a better way. And they now today all believe it's all about power, it's all about cynicism, ideals do not exist, there is no prophecies, there isn't even a God, we are on our own. So let's dig in that deep abyss of ours and stay there. That's basically how it is today. Most of the places, truly, even those who preach and talk about salvation through different sects and groups and religion and so on, you find there is some kind of power behind it, or somebody fueling it, or so on, or it will be used to fights and feuds, and they will suppress or be suppressed. And so there is apparently no easy solution and answer to how that liberty should be proposed to the nations out in the world, but it could be what can be proposed as something we all must uphold, and if you don't, you will be held back from misusing it. So everybody should just respect the rules of choices and others' choices, and everyone who oversteps them will be accountable. This could be a way. And so those big powers will ask themselves, if I don't stay on top and misuse the resources that I can get to from those who believe in me and maybe have chosen me as an ally, and if I don't keep them in power who are allied with me because they lost the voice of the people or they lost their elections or whatever, and they will go to the opponents where maybe the other side is not so wonderfully idealistic as I am. And so what happens? What happens is we all fall down in that pit instead of believing in the fight to uphold that liberty and freedom, even though it's on a big cost, and it is asking of us not to accept suppression at any condition, not to accept people who suppress others just because they will be our allies or because that will give us access to what we want of resources. I am sure you will get that access if you believe in the grace of fighting for the greatness of that liberty and that beacon. And every nation on earth who had made this journey had become that civilization in the beginning and brought that beacon truly out. And then when they faltered, the beacon light were turned off or given over to a new place that has taken it up truly and fought for it and got it. This is also part of history. Somebody gets out of that abyss and show the way. And so the beacon will move from place to place. This is how I see it and believe in it anyway. But maybe the darkness has become so broad and so deep, and the corruption has gone so far, the cynicism is so widespread, and our hearts are so close to these notions and ideas and ability to believe in them anymore, that we need something totally transforming altogether. So maybe that will happen when we really fully become part of a robotic world and artificial intelligent world that can maybe make that thorough breakthrough to our minds on where we are standing and what kind of edge we are at, wanting to keep our humanity, and so facing that kind of challenge. That's why the movies who shows aliens coming from outside or nature catastrophe are trying to point out that only when we are met with such grave forces who are actually putting us all on the risk of that abyss, that we wake up and begin to fight and slowly take our hands together on that journey. And maybe that's where we are. We need that global external challenge. And maybe that's what they are providing us with, these people who think that they have a great plan of making the world a place of slaves and suppression and then taking power. And by doing that, everything will be fine for them and people will accept their role and place. And so when they do that, and from that stems the bells of liberty once again. It's like the basic story of Moses. That's why it's in my eyes so symbolic that the persecution of all these families killing their boys because of the dream that big tyrant had, that a boy from those people will kill him or will be the demise of him. And so by the same act that you were out on, that same boy were brought into him and gotten to know everything from the inside. And so he became the liberator after getting the torch of light from his God. Unfortunately, that hasn't stayed so, because also the people who took over that torch maybe threw it away or lost it or something. So it has changed hand many times, but the symbolic story of Moses can be repeated again, just on a larger scale, I believe. Well, that was a lot of talking. I believe in what I say, but I also believe that I'm not sure I'm speaking the same language people understand anymore, and that's why it's a weird and special outsider's talk from his cave, sharing his thoughts with the wall and the painting and the voice of Mozart and that Statue of Liberty and the YouTube channel who is made so it doesn't really affect so many, while people should not maybe take this too important and too seriously. But, I am perplexed and I'm sad and confused like so many else, and also looking to how the world will become and where it will take us. Maybe there is a good turn, who knows? Maybe there are millions of other voices like this one, and so the beacon and the torch has not really worn out. Who knows? I'm just maybe blind in my solidarity and solitude, and maybe there are much more solidarity than I think there is, and hopefully, because that would be a good turn. Anyhow, but maybe we're also in a place where it's gonna go madly, madly wrong, and from that darkness, in order for the light to shine, the darkness must be present. And so from that darkness comes not only the Batman, but that exact beacon of light that we all are gonna look for and make grow. And so we will lit the torch once again, not in the Statue of Liberty alone, and not in one place alone, but in the Statue of Liberty everywhere on Earth, on all 7 continents and the Arctic. And beside her, we will put a statue of responsibility, so we can always have that share of understanding that we lose liberty when we lose our responsibility. It's a kind of enlightenment with 2 wings. You must be enlightened on liberty and enlightened on the responsibility. You have to uphold it and keep it going and burning.